What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. The history the government hopes you never learn. Here is your host, Michael Rivero.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Friday, September 11th, 2020, the 19th anniversary of 9/11. We're going to be talking about that during our show today. And Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble. And we're going to do 9/11 until we run out of that. Then we'll do news and phone calls. And, of course, in hour number 2, the lovely Lady Claire will be joining us for her unique perspective on the world. So getting right on into it, I've written quite a few. Okay, we've had quite a few articles on 9/11 at the whatreallyhappened.com website, and we posted a bunch of them last night and a few more this morning. But one of the reasons why I'm convinced that this was a complete fraud has to do with the behavior of the Secret Service at Booker Elementary School. Now, as you know, on 9/11, George W. Bush was down at Booker Elementary School reading about my pet goat with a classroom of children. And White House aide Andrew Card walked on in to tell him a second plane had hit the World Trade Towers, at which point we presume everybody understands that there is, in fact, a terrorist attack underway here. And what's really interesting is that nothing happened after that. Okay, the Secret Service did not grab George W. Bush, get him out of that classroom, and get him into the armored limousine called the Beast, and just start driving to foil a possible inbound, because his presence at that school had been in the media 4 days in advance. So presumably whoever behind 9/11 knew he was going to be there. And there was an airport just 4 miles away. And yet the Secret Service did nothing. And I titled the article, "The Dog That Did Not Bark," in reference to a Sherlock Holmes story called The Silver Blaze, where Sherlock Holmes determines that the owner of the house was actually the criminal, because in the night the dog did not bark. And the dog did not bark because it recognized its master. And so I basically said the Secret Service did nothing. And they're not going to, risk the life of the president on a guess. I mean, if you look at how quickly they took care of Reagan when he was shot at, I mean, they're trained to just move immediately to protect the president. And that's all they do. They don't have any other considerations. But in this case, the dog did not bark. The Secret Service did absolutely nothing because the criminal was its master. And on the basis of that, I have concluded the Bush administration was part of the 9/11 plot. Not all of it, but definitely part of it. Now, interestingly enough, Bush on 2 separate occasions stated he saw the plane hit World Trade Center 1. This, of course, was a complete lie, because there were no cameras on World Trade Center 1 when that first plane hit. The only video footage of that impact came from a documentary crew, the No Day brothers, who were filming a documentary about a trainee in the New York Fire Department, and they just happened to catch the plane hitting the World Trade Tower 1. But that video was not available until several hours after it was all over. Now, the only way Bush could have seen the first plane hit the World Trade Center was if it was on closed-circuit TV, which he certainly cannot admit, because that would indicate foreknowledge and guilt. So on 2 different occasions, he said he saw the plane hit the World Trade Center. He said he saw it on a TV while waiting to read about his pet goats here. And the principal of the school has said, no, there was no TV and it wasn't showing the first impact. So Bush basically lied about that. Now, another big whopper of a lie came from the BBC, which reported the collapse of World Trade Center 7 26 minutes before it actually happened. And we have still images of the BBC's reporter standing in front of a window with Building 7 still standing behind it. And the supercards and everything are saying that the building has collapsed. And Fox News and CNN also reported the collapse of the building before it actually happened. So everybody was following a script, but whoever had the detonator for Building 7, they got off script here. Now, looking at Building 7 itself, a lot of people have studied that image and said it's obviously a controlled demolition, because there are over 80 load-bearing members that had to collapse at exactly the same split second for the building to come down into its own footprint and not damage buildings nearby to it. So NIST has tried to explain that away. When Richard Gage was here on Wednesday, he was talking about the hoops that NIST was leaping through to try and explain why there was only one or two beams that let go, and then somehow the entire building came down into its footprint. Now, that video has been shown to controlled demolition experts around the world without telling them where it's from. And they all say the same thing. Of course, it's a controlled demolition. That's the only way a building comes down like that. But I mean, they were blaming it on all kinds of things, like, you know, the fires were really much hotter than would be normal for an office fire, and because the mayor stored thousands of gallons of diesel fuel in the office building. But the reality is it was a controlled demolition, and it just came right on down. They all three were, but it's very, very obvious in the case of building number 7. Now, there has been evidence that surfaced in the photos of the ruins of the World Trade Towers of the use of shaped cutter charges on the load-bearing members. These are diagonal cuts, which liquid iron has dribbled down from and then cooled and hardened. And the job of a shaped charge is to cut steel H-beams. And they cut the beams at an angle to make the building shift over and walk as it comes on down here. Now, FEMA gave $600,000 in funding to the BPAT team, and they were basically looking at a collapse analysis themselves. And it basically took the BPAT team more than 3 weeks to initiate an analysis of WTC debris, and this allowed critical evidence to be removed. The only thing that prevented some of the evidence being destroyed was an independent researcher. Okay. So a lot of people are saying that what was used to bring down the World Trade Towers was thermite or nanothermite. Now, thermite is a mixture of iron oxide and aluminum powder, and it burns very, very hot, about half the temperature of nuclear fission, and it leaves behind it raw iron and white smoke, which is the aluminum oxide. So thermal hotspots with temperatures in excess of 700 degrees centigrade were found in the World Trade Center wreckage for months after the collapses. And this is obviously not heat that could have been generated from an office fire. Now, everyone says, well, there was all the jet fuel on the airplanes, but that all burned up outside the building. Remember that bright, brilliant flash when the planes hit? That was the fuel from the wing tanks being dumped outside and set on fire. So there really wasn't that much that went into the building itself. But there were explosions. There were eyewitness reports of explosions before the collapse of the World Trade Centers. And the 9/11 firefighters were out there saying that they thought that there might be bombs. There were even media reports saying that bombs had been found in the wreckage. All of that's been erased here. And of course, this morning, all of the corporate media was out there trying to reinforce the official story. History Channel is running the true story of Flight 93 tonight, which is just another pack of lies on that one here. Now, one of the big mysteries of 9/11 is who told Rudy Giuliani the World Trade Center was going to collapse on 9/11, because he abandoned the emergency command center with his staff, and they were out on the street when Building 7 came down. And he said at the time that they had been told the building was going to collapse. Later on, he tried to say no, that he didn't say that at all. And the reason for that is very simple. On 9/11, prior to 9/11, no steel-framed building had ever collapsed just from fire. There was a fire out at the First Interstate Bank in Los Angeles some years before that burned 6 entire floors right down to the steel frame, and the building remained standing. So who told Giuliani it was going to collapse? Well, we know that the Office of Emergency Management issued a warning that Building 7 was going to come down. But how did they know? How could they know? Again, there was no historical precedent for it. Now, the firefighters should have been broadcasting warnings of a huge, huge fire, which was causing structural failure. And instead, the radio shows them calmly preparing to move up to the 79th floor. Okay, now the OEM issued a collapse warning 5 minutes before WTC-2 came down. How did the OEM know something the firefighters didn't? And why weren't these warnings broadcast to the firefighters over the radio? Now, we know that the weekend immediately preceding 9/11, the security cameras in the buildings were powered down and the normal patrols with bomb-sniffing dogs were curtailed. This is an undisputed fact. So here's the question. Did a single weekend give enough time for the two towers and World Trade Center 7 to be wired for demolition? And the videos suggest yes, it was, especially if the nanothermite was applied as a paint. Now, one of the real stories about 9/11 that people talk about a lot are the so-called dancing Israelis. These were Israelis who were working for urban moving systems as a cover. 3 of them were later identified by NPR as Mossad agents. And they basically set up a video camera aimed at the Twin Towers from the New Jersey shore. And they were spotted by people around there who just wondered what they were doing, because they set up the camera before the first plane struck. And then after the plane struck, they were dancing and high-fiving and congratulating one another. And people called the police on them, and the police stopped them. And the Israelis said, we're not your problem. The Palestinians are your problem. And they were arrested and eventually sent back to Israel, where they told the TV during an interview their job was there to document the event. Now, interestingly enough, the video from that camera has never been declassified, and the reason should be fairly obvious. If it does, in fact, show that first impact, it proves foreknowledge. It proves these dancing Israelis knew what was going to happen before it happened. Another interesting story has to do with Odigo, which is an instant messaging service also owned by Israelis. And it says 2 of its workers received messages 2 hours before the Twin Towers attacks on September 11th, predicting the attack was going to happen, warning them to get away, because Odigo's offices in Manhattan were very close to the World Trade Towers. Now, the manager of the office trapped the IP from where the messages came, gave it to the FBI. The FBI took it, and that was the last anybody heard of it. Interestingly enough, all the 9/11 airports were serviced by one Israeli-owned security company, ICTS, which was also in charge of the gate where shoe bomber Richard Reed was allowed onto an airplane, even though they knew he was dangerous, and then later on the so-called crotch bomber. Now, coincident with 9/11 was the anthrax mails that were being sent on out, that were sent to media and Congress to try and generate the maximum amount of press. But the attacks were not unexpected. Washington Post journalist Richard Cohen was told soon after September 11th to secure Cipro, the antidote to anthrax. The tip had come in a roundabout way from a high government official, and he was carrying Cipro way before most people had even heard of it. Then there was the insider trading. There were a huge number of shorts placed on the airlines involved in the incident. And a lot of those criminal insider trading leads directly back to the CIA's highest ranks, and in particular, CIA Executive Director Buzzy Krongard. Now, he also managed a firm that handled put options on United Airlines. There was also another rather interesting little aspect. American Express had a computer center in the World Trade Towers, and just before the planes hit, there was a huge amount of money that was taken out of those servers and sent somewhere else. Then, of course, the planes hit, the computers were destroyed. Nobody knew where the money went. Well, it turned out there was a company in Europe that had developed a laser scanning system for recovering data off of damaged disks. And they agreed to help find out what was on those disks. And then some party came along and bought the company. The project was put on hold. Now, there's one unreported story, and you don't even see it today here. When the 9/11 attacks happened and people wanted to get off Manhattan, of course, the public transport was jammed, the roads were jammed, the tunnels were jammed, but there were people who came across from the opposite shores in their own private boats to help evacuate people from Manhattan Island. About 500,000 people were boat lifted out of Manhattan that day by citizens with no government direction and no government help. But you never see them interviewed. You never hear about all the people who were rescued by all these volunteers. All right, so there we are for 9/11. And again, they're still trying to sell the official story on that one. Okay, last night, Trump was in Michigan, and he bashed Joe Biden on jobs. is warning America about this. President Trump tore apart Joe Biden's job creation record at a raucous rally in the key battleground state of Michigan on Thursday evening, calling the former Veep a Washington vulture. If Biden's elected, Trump said, China will own America. Washington vultures like Biden and others ripped apart entire towns all across your state. This was told to a crowd of supporters in an overflowing airport hangar in Freeland, Michigan. Michigan lost half of all manufacturing jobs after the trade deals that Biden supported, the president continued during his 90-minute address here. Now, Nancy Pelosi seems to be taking a cue from Dr. Fauci, saying that the reason we're getting all of these horrible things, hurricanes in the Gulf and fires in the West, is we've angered Mother Earth. So yesterday on MSNBC's The Readout, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi attributed the wildfires plaguing her state and hurricanes that have battered the Gulf to so-called climate change. According to Pelosi, the natural disasters were a sign that Mother Earth is angry. So here we are on the eve of 9/11, the 19th anniversary of 9/11, as we are filled with sadness, continue to be filled with sadness about those who lost their lives at that time and since from consequences of 9/11, Pelosi said. That was going to be our focus this week. We have these fires in California and in the West. 16 people have died in Washington, Oregon, and California, including a firefighter and a 1-year-old baby. We, our firefighters, have been so very, very courageous. I actually agree with Pelosi on that last one. But, you know, this talk of Mother Earth and everything, they're back to pushing climate change again. I mean, Denver went from triple-digit temperatures, which is normal for Denver in the summer, to snow in 48 hours. And I think it's going to be an early and hard winter. And we're still going to hear global warming, global warming, global warming. Turning to the international news, the Houthis have struck Riyadh with missiles and drones. The Saudi coalition is retreating in Yemen. So late last night, the Saudi capital of Riyadh came under a missile and drone attack from the Ansar Allah movement, more widely known as the Houthis. The Yemeni missile and air forces loyal to the Houthi government announced they struck a high-value target in Riyadh with a Zulfiqar ballistic missile and 3 Samad 3 suicide drones. The attacks are a response to the enemy's permanent escalation and its continuing blockade against our country, Brigadier General Yahya Sari, a spokesman for the armed forces of the Houthi government, said in his statement, promising more attacks on Saudi Arabia if the kingdom continues its aggression and siege on Yemen. Turning to the economic news here, Jeff Bezos tops Forbes' list of richest Americans for the 3rd year in a row as his wealth soars to $180 billion, while Trump's ranking drops to 352 as the pandemic takes its toll on his hotels and resorts. Now, we are beginning to see mass store closures, evictions, and the debt default fiasco. It's only just begun. And interestingly enough, I was watching this story on Fox News just before we went to air, where they're talking about how the Senate failed to pass a coronavirus relief bill. And the argument was basically given, you know, that we're going to have all of these businesses going out of business very soon. That's going to ratchet up the unemployment. And of course, the person who was defending the decision to cancel the coronavirus relief said, well, you know, look at the unemployment numbers. Unemployment is up. We're in the middle of a recovery and everything's fine. And we can't go on asking people in Texas, you know, to pay for the problems in other states. So, but the news is that if you were expecting another $1,200 check, it doesn't look like it's going to happen. JCPenney, which is a 118-year-old department store, is on the cusp of a rescue deal with landlords to save themselves from bankruptcy that would cost 70,000 jobs. Okay, the Nikola shares drop after the Hindenburg research firm calls it an intricate fraud and compares it to Theranos. Thought they would compare it to Enron. Anyway, today we reveal why we believe Nikola is an intricate fraud built on dozens of lies over the course of its founder and executive chairman Trevor Milton's career, the report claims. We have gathered extensive evidence, including recorded phone calls, text messages, private emails, and behind-the-scenes photographs detailing dozens of false statements by Milton. We've never seen a level of deception in a public company of this size. We have to take a break here for some commercials. We'll be back with more news after these few words. And welcome back to our show here. And I just got an interesting little email here. What a good criminal profiler looks for: emotion, behavior. In other words, behavior that would be fitting to the horrific event. Bush's lack of behavior would indicate to a profiler he had knowledge in advance that 9/11 would take place. I think that definitely says it all. Just a reminder, the Republic Broadcasting Network is in the middle of a perpetual fundraiser, and the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity, cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. The network thanks you. Okay, over in Saudi Arabia, they're struggling right now. They had this failed oil price war, and now they're suffering the consequences. And it is evident to anyone with even half a brain that the last Saudi-instigated oil price war would end in abject failure, just as the previous 2014 to 2016 effort did, and for exactly the very same reasons. Now, we had a caller call into the show earlier in the week asking about this. You know, what possible disruption is coming that requires China to start massive stockpiling of all possible commodities? And I don't know, but they obviously feel that something is coming that is going to disrupt the global chain, supply chain here. Okay, over in Great Britain, a prominent Glasgow-based lawyer has been ordered to pay £500 in fines after helping fake an anti-Semitic vandal attack on his own home in order to smear a Scottish Palestinian solidarity group. All right. Remember, over at George Washington University, Jessica Krug was this professor who'd been pretending to be black all of her career. She finally admitted she was white. She has now resigned. Okay, we were talking about Climbgate. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines, 800-313-9443, 800-313-9443. In 48 hours, Colorado's wild weather sets records for both hot and snow. And the roller coaster forecast was truly something that Assistant State Climatologist Becky Bollinger said, truly something I've never seen. In Fort Collins, the Colorado Climate Center at Colorado State University measured 0.3 of an inch of snow Tuesday morning, tweeting the earliest accumulating snow ever observed in over 130 years of records. Remember what I said about an early and hard winter here. Up in Oregon, in Portland, they have become the first city to ban corporate use of facial recognition surveillance. And I think that's a really good start. I don't know how you feel about facial. My problem with facial recognition is there's a high false positive rate. It's not a robust technology here. Over in Lake Tahoe, they've got a bubonic plague warning after fleas test positive. After new cases of bubonic plague were found in Los Angeles, Colorado, and in Mongolia near the Russian border this summer, it appears the infamous plague strain responsible for killing tens of millions of Europeans during the 14th century continues to surface, this time in South Lake Tahoe, California. The U.S. Forest Service Lake Tahoe Basin Management Unit issued a plague warning on Thursday, September 3rd, ahead of Labor Day weekend, informing the public that fleas in the area tested positive for bubonic plague. They reported visitors should take the following precautions when visiting areas where active bubonic plague has been found. Remember to stay on trails, and if you must bring your pet, keep them on a short leash. Do not let them investigate rodent burrows, which makes a lot of sense here. Okay. Now then, the Pope, good for the Pope, praises sex and good food as divine pleasures that come directly from God. Don't worry, I'm not going to convert to Catholicism, but it is rather interesting that he would say that. Pope Francis has said, the pleasures of a well-cooked meal or loving sexual intercourse are divine. All right, that's pretty good there. I'm going to take a phone call from Daniel in British Columbia. Hello, Daniel. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Michael. Yeah, I was doing a little bit of research on these Oregon fires and the one in Washington State. And turns out there was someone caught burning some of the median, the dry grass in the median.
Yeah.
They claimed they were looking for their camera. So I guess they ran this guy's name, and turns out he was in Ferguson during those protests and was using a flare to try and light a car on fire. He was arrested for that. So I was watching these videos about Ashland, Oregon, and there's a huge portion of a little city just adjacent to that called Talent. And Ashland is mostly like Democrat. There was a Black Lives Matter rally there.
Mm-hmm.
And Talent is a Republican stronghold country. And there's one of these state troopers, I think, or the Talent police could be heard on this Twitter saying this looks like arson to him.
Yes.
And another woman was saying that someone was shooting mortars into the forest. Mortars.
All right, Daniel, stay on the line. Stay on the line. I'm going to put you on hold. We're going to come right back to you after these words from our sponsors. And welcome back to our show. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. We're talking with Daniel in British Columbia. And Daniel, I'd seen on Twitter where a lot of people were starting to say that all of these fires we're seeing all over the West, that arson is involved in at least some of them.
Yes, they've opened up arson investigations, and already on the mainstream media, they're saying, oh, this isn't Antifa, that's just some rumor. And I'm thinking, well, how would they possibly know that? And so far, this guy from Puyallup, Washington, he was caught red-handed. There's a live stream. He's doing his own live stream where he's getting arrested, and they're doing a background check on him, and they find out, yeah, he's been seen by witnesses trying to burn a car in Ferguson. And he's arrested right there on camera. So it just seems like, they're going to pick the windiest day of the year, the hot, dry season, and as a cover. It's, as far as I'm concerned, it does look like arson to me, because, yes. Some of these fires, there was no lightning storms, and, these things are just spread out all over Ashland. And, well, because I used to live there, I used to bump into Jeff Rentz. I used to go to his tanning salon, and he has a house at the other side of Ashland.
Yes.
Yeah, he's got a big property on the other side of Ashland. That part was saved. So luckily that part was saved.
Glad for that.
But this whole thing just looks really suspicious. And of course, if you try and find any evidence that Antifa, Snopes will probably be out there saying, oh, there's no evidence, and so on and so forth.
They're going to blame it on Muslim terrorists, probably.
Yeah, well, exactly. Well, even that's becoming taboo. But I did want to talk about 9/11, but I know you got a lot of callers, and I know
we got time. We got time. Go ahead and talk about 9/11.
Okay. Well, there was one other subject. I'll wait for another day because I'd have to get into at least 5 minutes. It's some Christopher Berlin research. If anyone goes to ChristopherBerlin.com.
Well, we have one of his presentation videos up on the front of whatreallyhappened.com right now. So go ahead and take 5 minutes.
Okay, well, there's a story that he has with one of these MAGA group, the mega group, I should say. And his name is Ronald Lauder.
Mm-hmm.
This gentleman is a dual Israeli billionaire, heir to the Estee Lauder cosmetics fortune.
Mm-hmm.
And he was on Ronald Reagan's defense policy board as far back as 1981. So my question would be, why is this gentleman involved in U.S. defense policy, being a dual Israeli citizen? And also he's got some links to having Stewart Air Force Base, or the Air Cadet Base,
mm-hmm.
privatized. It was privatized in the mid-'90s,
mm-hmm.
along with the World Trade Center complex, and he
Yes.
was a big part of having it. Now, the curious thing, this is in New Windsor, New York State,
Mm-hmm.
and it just so happens that flights 11 and 175 nearly collided over that privatized Air Cadet Base. Even though they left Boston Logan 16 minutes apart,
Yep.
they nearly collided. So this is something that a lot of researchers have looked into, including Christopher Berlin, and it's a really interesting story because we know about Dov Zakheim's Systems Planning Corporation, where they had the most advanced remote control servo technology for Boeing aircraft.
Yes.
They're able to take a 747 and land it in Australia and come back to the United States without a pilot. This was before 9/11. So a lot of people think that the planes that flew into the towers were actually drones or military issue KC-767s with upgraded.
Or they were regular passenger jets that had been modified with these remote control flight systems. And there's one witness at the Pentagon who said it looked to him like the flight crew that he could see through the cockpit windows, that they were struggling with the controls.
Yeah. As far as the World Trade Center, a lot of the witnesses said those planes looked like they were dark in color and they were windowless. So,
well, the photos show otherwise.
Yes, Ronald Lauder, this guy, he funded a school for the Mossad in Israel. And like I said, he's part of that mega group with Jeffrey Epstein and Les Wexner. So just something to look into. And it's very interesting. I mean, 19 years on, it seems like people, forget about this attack. But I mean, whenever it's mentioned, it's always talked about with the 19 hijackers with box cutters, which I think is a complete fabrication. It was a cover story.
Oh, it is. I mean, after it was all over, there were at least 7 of them were found to still be alive. Saudi Arabia actually sued. One of the Saudis actually sued the United States for defamation. He was a pilot for the Saudi Airlines, and he won the lawsuit. Yeah,
that story's still on the BBC website, archived at least.
Okay.
And, the whole box cutter story was from Barbara Olson, who's the wife of Ted Olson, Solicitor General, and he claimed that she phoned him on the flight and said there's men with box cutters, and then they went and digged into the fact that there wasn't any seatback phone on that particular air flight. After he said first it was a cell phone call and they can't operate at 30,000 feet.
Nope.
And then they said it was a seatback phone. And then they found out that model didn't have seatback phones, and then they found the duration of the phone call was 0 seconds. So there's a lot of, it's like this Kennedy assassination that you can go on for years and years and years.
Yes.
And, everyone can debate about how and so forth. But at least it keeps the conversation going.
Yes, it does.
I'm more interested in, I think this Jeffrey Epstein situation is another way to expose the United States being usurped by a foreign nation, just like 9/11. So it's just it's up to the alternative media to really cover it and keep on it like a rabid dog.
We're doing our best here. I don't know about the rabid dog image. I'm not rabid and I'm not a dog. Anyway, Daniel, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Dave in Maryland. Hello, Dave. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, what's going on, Mike? Yeah, I wanted to talk about the Durham report.
Yes.
With Trump. So it was just like a big nothing burger again, right? It was just all
so far, yeah.
Years. Like, so where's everybody's hope now? I mean, that was their last bit of hope that there was going to be the Durham report, and so I mean, what are they saying about this now? Like, that's just it's like a deep state plot that stopped everything, or so what happened? It was just all fake, right?
Yeah. It was another phony investigation.
Yeah, just another big, so that's just another thing that they show you. There's no indictments coming, and Trump is a fraud. So, okay.
They got one indictment of a lower level individual out of it.
Oh, that's big league winning right there, Mike. My head's spinning from that one.
Yeah.
And anyway, no, from the last caller, he added a point. Trump said it was Arabs dancing on 9/11, correct? Remember in 2016? He said it was Muslims celebrating, right?
Well, there was a hoax that was perpetrated in Palestine, where somebody showed up with a truck full of food and started handing it out. And of course, the Palestinians were cheering and clapping. And somebody shot a video of that, and it was aired in the United States with the caption, "Palestinians celebrate 9/11."
Yeah, but Trump doubled down like 100%, and there was a big thing about the news, like, and they were like, well, there was some people celebrating across the bridge in Jersey and all that. Trump, he said it was Muslims, Mike, and you know for well, he knows that it was Israelis. So that's just another sign that he's a complete fraud. He's a complete sellout. And then I'm glad the one guy brought up the mega group, you know, because it's all tied in with Khashoggi. Trump bought Khashoggi's boat from him. That's where he met Melania. He wished Ghislaine Maxwell well. He was friends with Epstein his whole life. I mean, come on, man. So anybody that's still out there pushing Trump is just like, they're either an idiot or they're like a shill, like they're getting paid to do it. Like there's no.
Well, let me ask you a question. Let me ask you a question. Do you think Biden is any less compromised?
It doesn't matter. There's no difference between Biden or Trump. That's the whole thing. They get you wrapped up in this game thinking, oh, well, I'm going to vote for this guy. I'm going to vote for this guy. Trust me, whoever they want in there is already selected. It doesn't matter, Mike. The mail-in ballots and all this nonsense, it's a fraud. So, I mean, anyway, I just think you know, the best part about it is I just like to keep hammering into people about how they were played with Trump, because most people woke up and they cut their losses. They were like, all right, I was duped. And I was one of them. But the people that are diehards, that they know that they were fooled and they still don't care, they're still going, that's how you keep just laughing at them and pointing and showing in their face. But it's all right. Like I said, at the end of the day, just never forget that Trump said that it was Muslims celebrating on 9/11. And, you know, and then his Bill Barr, the AG Bill Barr, he even, remember, he blocked the families to get any, like, information about 9/11. That was another thing that he said he was going to do, release the 28 pages. But then they blocked all that and they stopped all the families. So, all right, well, that's a couple of things I wanted to make. Just
the 28 pages, though, were a fraud that was intended to frame Saudi Arabia for 9/11.
Yeah. Oh, I know it was a scam, but it was just another one of those things that he said, and he was going to have the families were going to, you know, he was going to release information, and then he did the complete opposite and blocked all of it. You know, so I don't know. And then one other thing I caught. Did you say that the plane that hit the Pentagon, that there was people on the ground that saw the pilots through the window struggling?
Yeah, there was one witness who was really close to the plane coming in, and it said it looked like the flight crew was struggling with the controls.
I'd like to talk with that guy today.
Well, I don't have his contact information,
he must have good
unfortunately, but that was definitely one of the eyewitness reports.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, Mike. Well, like I said, man, I mean, are you going to vote for Trump? Is that what you're going to do?
I can't vote for Biden. I mean, I might vote for my wife. I might write Claire's name in.
You know what? Part of me, the way I feel, I almost want to vote for Biden. That's my final, like, one finger salute to Trump for completely betraying his base and being a completely 100% fraud sellout. I'd rather it'd be like the last thing you could do, like, because if we got Biden there, because guess what? I guarantee you, if Biden goes in there, they will get indictments, and Trump and Kushner and all those people, they will drag them out of there, and that'll be the final thing. Like, that'll be the best part about it, because they'll actually get it done. Like, they will get arrests done. Versus Trump, it was all a scam, you know. So, but
I disagree. I think if Biden gets in there, the deep state's going to be even better protected than they have been up till now.
Deep state is Israel. They're both in on it.
No,
Biden's on camera saying you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist.
The deep state is the corrupt core of our own government.
I don't know, man. It's all two sides of the same coin, Mike. You're not. Trust me, I used to buy into all this stuff, and that's why I'm like, no, there's no way. Biden's on camera saying that you don't have to be Jewish to be a Zionist. That means that he's Israel first. Donald Trump is a Zionist. He's Israel first. They have videos when he signed the anti-First Amendment, anti-free speech laws on college campuses, where they had his Jewish guys out there. They were like, Trump's the first Jewish president. He won the Tree of Life Award and all this stuff. So either way, it doesn't matter who gets selected this year, Mike. America loses again. So,
yes.
You know, and then like you said, right now, which I'll say this and I'll stop. I don't care what Trump says. Right now, what you see is going on. This is Trump's America. It's not what Biden's America will be. No, this is Trump's America. What you see, what's going on right now. And then at the end of the day, think about it. Oh,
Mhm.
could you imagine if it was Hillary? Could you imagine if it was Hillary right now? Oh my God, how bad would it be? It's a
Oh
joke,
man,
Mike.
that'll keep me up at
It's
night.
a scam. It's a scam. I'm telling you. Trust me. Hey, at least they respected Obama. When they tried to change the name of the Washington Redskins, Obama was like, "Nah, that's his team." But guess what? Trump got in there. They changed the name. They said it was racist. That's just another little snippet. Anyway, Mike, like I said, at the end of the day, don't ever forget that Trump said it was Muslims dancing on 9/11 celebrating.
All right. Well, I'm definitely going to have to go back and look at that again because yeah, that was definitely wrong there. All right. Well, David, thank you very
Yeah.
much for the call. We're going to let you go and switch over to Joe in Tennessee. Hello, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Boy, that last caller, it's Trump's fault that the Washington Redskins changed their name. I mean, he's got to be kidding, huh? I mean, that's about as ridiculous a comment I've heard on your show. But I'll leave it at that. I think the audience of your listeners is smart enough to see through that diatribe and that rant. I have to tell you, I'm a big 9/11 truther, and happy Treason Day.
Yes.
And I just wanted to say this is how I view why I support Trump is because I was a big believer in exposing the 9/11 lie. I mean, I was giving out DVDs all over Florida. I was sending them around the world. Anytime I went on a ship, I'd bring DVDs with me. I made 90,000 of them, gave them out by hand. Or had people that I sent packages of them. And my strategy was exposure. And to try to expose the establishment, the people that were behind 9/11. And I see in Trump that his enemies, and he's been very effective in discrediting the establishment, the deep state, the people, and the institutions that were behind 9/11. And I'm going to read you a few. Let's see the media. Who has done more to discredit the media in this country since 9/11 than Donald J. Trump? Okay, the Department of Justice, the FBI, who covered up the who has done more since 9/11 to destroy the credibility of the Department of Justice and the FBI than Donald Trump? Who has done more?
Well, I think the FBI and the Department of Justice have destroyed their own credibility. I don't think it's Donald Trump.
Well, I think it's Donald Trump putting pressure on him. I mean, if Donald Trump wasn't elected, we never would have known what the FBI did. There would never be an adversarial.
We knew what the FBI was doing all the way back when Vincent Foster got murdered.
And that's my point. To the average American, the average flag-waving Republican, the average Joe Schmo populist type Republican in Michigan or wherever, they've always believed the FBI had credibility, even after nobody believed. I mean, that was one of my biggest obstacles was how great the FBI is. But by what they tried and attempted to do to Donald Trump, they've exposed themselves, and that's the point of my phone call, is that Donald Trump's presidency, whether it's accidental or whether the Lord is just using hatred of Donald Trump to destroy the people that, and this is my point, I can go through a list of the institutions that hate Donald Trump that have destroyed their credibility. Yes.
Joe, hang on to that list here. We got to take another break for commercials. Don't hang up. I'm putting you on hold. We'll be right back. And welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Joe in Tennessee, and you said you had a list of organizations that hate Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, I'd just like a list of organizations and institutions that are losing their credibility because of Donald Trump and their actions against Donald Trump. For instance, the military-industrial complex, the way these generals have been coming out at him, the Senate, the establishment Republicans in the Congress and the Senate. The Jews really showed their hands in their impeachment. It always seems like all this, Adam Schiff and Nadler. It's interesting to watch the radical Jews try attempted coups to overthrow an election. Sports, entertainment, Hollywood, all that has really gone out on a limb to embarrass themselves with their hatred of Trump. The PC culture, feminism, the judiciary, the way the FISA court. It really, I mean, I could go on, but I just think that it's, Trump to me is like some sort of a stumbling block for these people. And that's part of the reason I support him, is because, once again, I was out on a street corner trying to expose 9/11 and the corruption of our system, our institutions. And Trump has done a lot to move the ball. Nobody else has done what he's done. That's why he's hated by the institutions that covered up 9/11. And I think that it would have been a mistake for him to take on these institutions head on when he first became president, because they would have destroyed him right away. And
Yes.
The way he's done it is basically genius on my part. And if he wins re-election with a Republican House and Senate, he's going to be the new American Caesar, and they're not going to be able to stop him. And plus, he won't have to worry about re-election. His only threat will be assassination. And
Yes.
he's going to, and you never know. I mean, he might turn on Israel. I mean, not the way you don't know. I mean, he's potential, the only potential that I see for possibly holding the account some of these 9/11 perpetrators is a Donald Trump re-election and House and Senate. I mean, there's nothing else possible that can happen to bring it about. And to do that, we have to clean out and destroy the 7th floor of the FBI, the State Department, the CIA, the NSA. They all have to be cleaned out. And that's in the process potentially of happening. It's definitely not going to even have an iota of a chance if Biden-Harris wins. You can at least say for Trump, he's moved the ball. He's the awareness and the awakening of the people. And it's not just like the offbeat people that were aware of 9/11 and kind of, it's the mainstream of the Republican Party now is aware of the corruption of the FBI. I mean, that's a huge thing. And so you can't, I hear a lot of people, criticize them. I criticize them about not coming down on Antifa. And I mean, I've called mad at him itself. But I mean, I got to say, he's moved the ball as far as awareness and awakening the public towards our institutional corruption more than anybody else I can say alive today, in my view. And maybe it's accidental, and maybe he's either an incredible genius one of two ways. He could be an incredible genius for the change agent that we need, or he could be an incredibly diabolical genius that's going to Judas goat us. I mean, I say it's one or the other. Yes.
Joe, got to let you go. Got to take a break for
All right,
station identification. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show, hour number 2. We're going to take 2 more phone calls, and we're going to close the line so that the lovely Lady Claire gets the hour for her unique perspective on the world. So let's go to Mo in Florida. Hello, Mo. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. Hi, Claire. How you doing?
Doing okay.
Mike, I don't even have a question, but your previous caller talking about the connection with the Israel.
Yes.
My question is this. Jared Kushner married Ivanka. She became Jewish.
Yes.
You're very well aware of this from your previous marriage. Your previous wife was Jewish.
Yes.
The Chabad-Lubavitch connection, which Jared Kushner is a member of, with Netanyahu, the whole situation. What do you think is going on here? I know that Putin was raised by rabbis. Are we just all being played by one big scam? Or do you think it's all tied together? Or do you think there's 2 different factions, like the Genoveses and the Gambinos, that are fighting it out? Because
I think there are multiple factions. I think there are multiple factions fighting it out. I don't think our presidents are necessarily pre-chosen. Certainly in 2016, it looked like Hillary was the anointed one, and Trump kind of spoiled it for her, which she flew into a rage and, beat up her campaign manager.
Well, I know all that, but like your previous caller said, I voted for Trump in 2000, the 2016, and I'll be honest with you, I think that I think we're being played. I think we're being played because he's not going to let his daughter. Come on, Jared Kushner's building had 666 on it. Netanyahu, he brags. Netanyahu sleeps in his bed. And this is Trump's advisors, Ivanka and Jared, the new Messiah. This is something wrong here, Mike. Come on. I mean, we're being played. I agree with the last caller. I think he's right on. We're spot on. They're playing the good cop, bad cop. That's what I think's going on, and that's just my opinion. And I kind of want to hear what Claire had to say about that, but I'll let you go and get your response if you can, if you want.
Okay, Claire, do you have a comment?
I do. It kind of ties in with the first article I'd like to address. And it has to do with the concept of hubris from Greek tragedy. But I'd like to address that a little bit later. But I want to thank the caller for their call.
All right, we're going to take one more phone call before turning the microphone over to Claire, and that's David in Boston. Hello, David. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, aloha, Michael. Michael, Mark Anderson just interviewed Judy Wood on Stop the Presses in the previous show, in the previous hour.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so she was talking. She was talking about how the Twin Towers were justified. You know the whole thing. You know all about the different theories of 9/11. The direct energy being justifying. She doesn't believe they were imploded. Blah blah blah. So
yes.
she's using the term justified all the time. They were justified. So for a little comic levity, I called in. Apparently, she's a very serious lady. Apparently, she lacks a sense of humor, which you have a terrific sense of humor. Every time I say something humorous, I always hear you giggle and laugh. You always get my humor. Like I called in, and her book and everything. Where did the towers go? They were justified, but where did they go? So I called in and I said, after the Twin Towers were justified, Pope John Paul II spoke ex cathedra, and he said that regarding the Twin Towers, he said, "From dust thou art, and to dust thou shalt return." Okay. But she didn't laugh. I think Mark Anderson got it, but. On Ash Wednesday and everything, the Catholic Church always teaches that we came from dust and we're going to return to dust. So she didn't get it at all. I thought inject maybe a little levity, but because she's saying they were justified. They were just, So I said, oh well, from dust thou, the Catholic teaching, from dust thou came and to dust thou shalt return. That's what happened to the twins. But anyway, the one thing about Judy Wood. Michael, and I'm skeptical about anyone that if you disagree with them, even in the slightest detail, in the slightest degree, they accuse you of being all wrong, all wet. And I find that I've listened to Judy Woods for years on Coast to Coast with George Norrie and everything else. And if anyone disagrees with her to the slightest degree, they don't know what they're talking about. They're all wet. They got to, and that's what makes me really skeptical about her. She's always 100% right. Everybody else is 100% wrong. So anyways, but I found out I think she takes herself too serious because she didn't even get that little humor about from dust thou came and to dust thou shalt return. And the title of her latest book and all this is Where Did the Towers Go? And she's saying they were justified and everything. So I guess maybe if she's not from a Catholic background, but I know Mark Anderson. I think Mark's from a Catholic background, and I just when she didn't get the play on words and a little bit of humor. I just said, thanks for taking the call, and I hung right up. So I didn't hear whether Mark Anderson laughed or not. But, if I must say so myself, if I was a cab driver all my life, Michael, so if I can blow my own horn, I like that one. I think that's pretty clever. The twins,
Yes.
To dust thou came, to dust thou shalt return. So it not only applies to people, but it applies to skyscrapers. They came from dust too, and to dust they shall return in the case of the Twin Towers. Does that make sense to you?
Well, it certainly does if you look at, the dust that goes into the making of concrete and so forth. But the issue is, even if the buildings are dustified, that dust has to go someplace. And without casting aspersions specifically on Judy Wood, there are a lot of people who are floating around whose goal is to delay the formation of a popular consensus as to what exactly did happen on 9/11. And this is where we get stories about micro nukes and no plane at the Pentagon and directed energy weapons, all of which fall apart on examination. And again, the arguments that Richard Gage had against a micro nuke also apply to directed energy weapons. Why didn't anybody see anything? Why wasn't a directed energy weapon caught on any of the video and photographs, of which there are copious amounts on 9/11?
Yeah. So anyways, I hung up because I didn't want to be judgmental, and I didn't want to. She asked, well, where did the desk go? And so I didn't know whether the desk went to heaven or whether it went to hell. So I just said, thanks for taking the call, and I hung up, But, hey, listen, I'll be listening intently now to Lady Claire. She's always a lady of grace, and she's always has some very cogent thoughts.
Yes, she does.
And I'm just dying to hear what she's going to say, talk about 9/11, Michael. So thank you for taking my call, okay?
Okay, you got it. David, thank you very much for the phone call. We're going to close the phone lines, and Lady Claire, take it away.
Yes. The first article, which comes to us from Zero Hedge, which I believe I've mentioned before, is a very cogent and sober website. There are some things they do that I disagree with, but this looks pretty straightforward. This comes to us from via almasdarnews.com. And apparently, Southeast Homs has once again been used by the Israeli Defense Forces, IDF, to bomb an area in Syria, a source in the Syrian Arab Army SSA in Damascus told Al-Masdar News. According to the source, missiles fired from the Al-Tanaf area targeted the town of Al-Safira in southern Aleppo, resulting in a number of explosions and at least 2 deaths, with Reuters later citing 7 killed. Mike, guess where the Israelis are basing from?
Where are they basing from?
The Al-Tanaf U.S. base inside Syria. I am having a palm to forehead moment reading this. And I have to wonder, and I just mentioned it with Dave, with all the classical Greek tragedies, the basic leitmotif that ties them all together is the concept of hubris.
Yes.
And the Israelis shooting at Syrians from inside an American base, which is illegally in Syria, that is hubris writ large.
Yes.
And I remember after 9/11 and being of service to a small Methodist faith community, I think you remember Pastor Colleen, right?
Yes, I remember Pastor Colleen.
And when the attacks against Iraq started, she was probably a lot, I think you could call her maybe a little bit more progressive.
Yes.
In her perception than I am or you are. But she shook her head and said, Claire, the U.S. is going to be punished. And for those Americans who think, oh, this is nothing, we haven't been punished since 9/11. We haven't been punished since all of these endless wars.
I'll tell that to all the people who got hit by the hurricanes and the wildfires.
Exactly.
Yes.
Folks, I think one can say reasonably that this country is still under not an attack from a foreign threat, but attacks by nature. You've had earthquakes, you've had hurricanes. And one of the things you need to do, and I would like to hope that all of our readers and listeners actually do this. You can get it probably from Google, Devastated Farmland US 2020.
Yes.
What is happening all over this country, and you don't get a big play in it, from the media. They say, oh, everything's hunky-dory, no problem. But if you take a look at that and you add to it all the processing plants, the meat processing plants that have had to be closed down since 9/11, you are looking at a significant dent in our food supply. And the price of that food just going, rocketing upward. And I would like to say, and I know I sound like a chip CD every time I do it, but potable water, storable food, way to cook it, extra medications for yourself, the people you care about, and your pets.
Yes.
And if your doctor or your vet says, what's this? and just tell them that you feel a little bit more emotionally secure having it around than not.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that even if it's a little shelf freezer, get it
Yes.
now, okay? Because I would like to think that we are not going to be in a full-on world war before the election. But I look at all these hotspots between Pakistan and India, between India and China, between the US and
China.
the South China Seas, the US and Russia. Folks, we have a lot of stuff that could deliberately be made to go south before these elections.
Mm-hmm.
And just please out there, I'm not going to be Mrs. Chicken Little of Santa Claus. Please take care of yourselves. That's
Yes,
all
very much
I
so.
am saying.
Very much so.
And now let's pivot to another another topic. Petition to prosecute Pelosi draws thousands of signatures.
As well it should.
Yeah, and there is a petition to prosecute Nancy Pelosi for violating COVID-19 regulations by visiting a hair salon in San Francisco, and it's attracted thousands of signatures in just 24 hours. And Mike, you know, somehow this reminds me about that cautionary tale of people in glass houses and stone throwing.
Yes.
Not a really good combination. And I have to ask, has Madam Speaker and all of her aides suddenly lost the ability to speak English? Because, I mean, this has come from her brother from another mother, and that would be California's Governor, Newsom.
Yes.
Governor Newsom.
Okay.
And
actually, I like Gruesome better,
Yeah.
but
Gruesome, well, if you talk to small business owners in Southern California.
Governor Gruesome.
Oh, Governor Gruesome. Okay. And she hasn't had the dignity to confess that she was wrong, my bad, but blames the owner of the shop.
Yep.
And, you know, this is something that Governor Newsom forbade. Absolutely. And she's asking for that owner for an apology.
Yeah, it's pretty arrogant. I mean, Pelosi's out there saying that she was set up, but Trump made a very good point. If she was dumb enough to fall for such a simple and obvious setup, then she's too stupid to be running the House of Representatives.
Amen. 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 I'd like to go to another issue here. And let me start by saying I am not an anti-vaxxer.
Yes.
When Mike got desperately ill and was coming home from hospital on Oahu, and I called my sister-in-law, who's an NP nurse practitioner, and I said, Loretta, what do I do to keep him from getting sick? And she said, go to your local NP and get a Pneumovax shot, which I did immediately. No question, no hesitation.
Yep.
Because I didn't want him sick. This has to do with a statement made by Ivanka Trump. And she has claimed that she will take the COVID-19 vaccine live on The View and says that Americans should all trust the FDA. Well, you know, after Joe Behar, who is the co-host of the U.S. talk show The View, announced she had no intention of taking a COVID-19 vaccine before Ivanka Trump does, the president's oldest daughter promptly offered to take it on live air. And Behar said, criticizing Donald Trump for claiming that a vaccine could be ready in the U.S. very soon, Behar said, he's simply trying to get elected. He will push anything to get reelected. Don't fall for it. And she said, by the way, I'll take the vaccine after Ivanka takes it. So Ivanka Trump responded directly to the challenge yesterday, tweeting, deal at Joy Behar. I would like to come on your show to do so. And she added that she trusts the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration, and so should all Americans. Miss Trump, I believe that's the correct nomenclature. She doesn't go by her husband's name.
No, well, just Ivanka.
Yeah, Ivanka. Okay. A word. Can we talk? I will trust the FDA once they really reduce the amount of bad vaccines floating around right now. Now, Ivanka, you may or may not know about this, but there is such a thing as a vaccine court in this country, which means that instead of prosecuting the bad vaccine manufacturers, the American public is on the hook for that. Now, since the inception of the U.S. drug court in 1998, this vaccine court has paid out taxpayer money, a total of $3.9 billion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Ivanka, I have to ask you, if all the vaccines were as were as safe as you seem to believe, why would this $3.9 billion have been paid out? And the short answer is, if all vaccines were safe, it wouldn't have been. Okay? But I would like to turn her attention and the attention to a drug which is still on the market, but whose manufacturer, Merck, is getting sued. And the complaint against the defendants, Merck and Company, and subsidiary Merck Dome Corporation, both of New Jersey, is seeking damages based on the following actions. Has to do with a drug, a vaccine called Gardasil.
Mm-hmm.
The suit is alleging negligence, strict liability, failure to warn, strict liability, manufacturing defect, breach of warranty, common law fraud, violation of Rhode Island's Deceptive Trade Practices Act. And the lawsuit also seeks punitive damages against Merck. Now, according to the complaint, apparently Merck failed to properly test Gardasil before the HPV vaccine was fast-tracked and administered to millions of young women and boys throughout the country and the world. And furthermore, Merck knew or had reason to know that its vaccine was defective, ineffective, but instead of issuing a warning to the medical community and the public, the company wrongfully concealed information and further made false statements concerning the safety and efficacy of Gardasil. Apparently, Merck spent more money marketing and advertising Gardasil than any other vaccine in history, says Gardasil lawyer Nicole Maldonado. The company made billions telling the parents of young girls that Gardasil could eliminate cervical cancer, but they had no clinical proof to back it up. And they still don't. And now
they're trying to get boys to take it.
Yeah, okay. And so moms and dads, and usually you see these ads during the news, whatever, trying to make you feel bad.
Okay,
and
well,
guilty.
we're going to have to put you on hold on this thing.
All right.
We got to take a quick break for commercials. Okay. Welcome back to our show here. And Lady Claire, if you could just kind of pick up where you left off.
Right. The lawyer for the plaintiff had made the observation that the company made billions telling parents of young girls that Gardasil could eliminate cervical cancer without having any proof to back up the claim. Now, what's happening now? We've got thousands of severe Gardasil vaccine injuries reporting. And the lawyers for the plaintiff says we intend to hold Merck accountable for concealing known safety risks in the name of massive profits. And here's something by Robert F. Kennedy, who is joining this team of attorneys. And he made the observation before there was Gardasil, there was Vioxx. Now, Merck paid billions to settle civil allegations that it purposely hid Vioxx's cardiovascular risks. They also paid $950 million in fines as a result of their criminal conduct. Now, this is not funny to me, but people who make medication for money, no matter what it does to the patient, I can see where, they could say this. When Gardasil came along, the boardroom at Merck joked that its HPV vaccine could help pay for the Vioxx claims. And sure enough, some of the same shadowy cast of characters who were involved in the Vioxx scandal worked on Gardasil. And they employed the exact same methods of manipulation of science and obscuring the risk as they did with Vioxx. And just as with Vioxx, Gardasil has left a calamitous health disaster in its wake. Now, this lawsuit is also claiming that Merck's Gardasil papillomavirus has caused a severe number of injuries to a teen. And according to the complaint, Gardasil contains a host of hazardous ingredients, get this, including at least one ingredient that Merck failed to disclose to regulators and consumers. Now, Gardasil contains a secret DNA adjuvant, and potentially it's a hazardous ingredient, and it's called HPV-LI-DNA fragments to make the vaccine more potent. Now, according to the allegations, Merck used this hidden adjuvant to prolong the immunological effects of the vaccine, but illegally eliminated it from its lists of substances and ingredients in the vaccine. Now, Gardasil also contains a particularly toxic aluminum-containing adjuvant, amorphous aluminum hydrophosphate sulfate, AAHS for short, which is a potent neurotoxin created by Merck that can result in very serious physiological harm. Now, studies have shown that AAHS can trigger autoimmune disorders and other serious conditions and has never been proven safe. Now, federal law demands that manufacturers cannot add adjuvants to vaccines that have not been proven safe. Now, Gardasil also contains, oh my gosh, borax, polysorbate 80, genetically modified yeast, all of which cause adverse events, the lawsuit alleges. Now, what Merck never did, they never tested any of these added ingredients for safety in vaccines. Now, the clinical trial was nothing short of a complete joke. In clinical trials, those who received the active medication is compared with those who receive a placebo. This is to measure the vaccine safety against an inert, inactive placebo, such as an injection of salt water. Now, with Merck's Gardasil clinical trials, however, they never used a real placebo, the complaint alleges. Instead, the company allegedly spiked the placebo with AAHS and the vaccine's other additives, which resulted in approximately equal number of subjects in the vaccine group and the placebo group suffering adverse reactions. Now, this gave the impression,
that's cheating.
Oh, my heavenly Ned. This gave the impression that Gardasil HPV vaccine was as safe as a placebo, when in fact significant numbers of subjects in both treatment groups suffered many serious medical complications, including symptoms of autoimmune disease, the lawsuit maintains. Now, this specific teenage girl who is the plaintiff developed POTS after 2 Gardasil injections, according to Julia Velasco's complaint. She was 13 when she got a Gardasil shot for the first time in August of 2014. She was a healthy, happy, lovely girl with a love of cheerleading, and Julie had never experienced any health problems in her life before her first Gardasil injection. Now, Julia's mother, Michaela, allowed her daughter to receive the Gardasil shot after years of exposure to relentless online print television marketing by Merck, representing that Gardasil is very safe. Gardasil protects cancer, and that good mothers
Protects against cancer.
Prevents cancer.
Okay, we're going to have to take another break for commercials. Okay. I'm sorry to keep cutting you off like this.
That's all right, no problem.
Okay, so just hold where you are. We're going to take another break for commercials. We'll be back with the Lady Claire after the few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with the lovely Lady Claire here about vaccine chicanery, and specifically the Merck company. Mm-hmm. And please continue.
Yeah. And when I first read this story, my heart just went out for that mom. You know, she obviously loves her daughter, wants the daughter to be as healthy as she can possibly be growing into adulthood. And she had no idea that Merck had engaged in what is called disease mongering and used false advertising and scare tactics to enhance Gardasil sales. Well, Mike, I think you and I remember this from the Fox article on bovine growth hormone.
Yes.
And there were a couple of reporters who were told, do a rosy piece on bovine growth hormone and why it's so good for us. They started doing the due diligence, and that stuff.
They discovered that
holy crud.
People who were eating the meat and dairy products from cattle treated with this hormone were coming down with all kinds of medical complications, and the Fox News reporters reported it accurately. Fox News told them to change the story. The reporters refused, and Fox fired them. Yeah. The reporters sued for wrongful termination under their contract and lost when the appeals court said there is no law that requires corporate media to tell you the truth about anything.
Yeah.
And therefore, the management of corporate media can order you to lie.
Mhm.
And if you refuse to lie, you can be fired for cause.
There you go.
There it is. That tells you all you need to know about the corporate media.
Yes, and pharmaceutical companies.
Yes.
Now, a year later, apparently in Rhode Island, they mandated the Gardasil vaccine be given to all school children before 7th grade. I wonder how much that cost the drug company in
Somebody
terms of
got
bribes.
bribed.
Yeah, someone got rolled. Now, within hours of receiving the first shot, this young girl, this teenager, experienced flu-like symptoms, including achiness, headache, nausea, and low-grade fever. And the symptoms lasted for approximately 24 to 48 hours. Now, but in the weeks that followed, this teenager experienced ear pressure, tinnitus, and headaches. Her symptoms were not typical, and over-the-counter medication didn't bring her any relief. Now, a few months later, Julia experienced more frequent and severe ear pain and tinnitus. And her mother took her to a doctor who prescribed Julia steroids. She received her second dose of Gardasil during this visit and proceeded to experience the same flu-like symptoms as before. Now, when months passed, Julia began to experience headaches of various degrees of seriousness and continued to deal with the ear pain and tinnitus.
Yep.
She also complained of fatigue and body aches. Her symptoms were severe enough she couldn't make it to school. Now, Julia and her mother visited multiple specialists to understand why she was experiencing what she was with the dizziness, headaches, ear pressure, and tinnitus. No one could really give them an answer or satisfactory relief, and the symptoms just kept on coming. Now, when Julia was due for her third Gardasil injection, the mom started to believe that Gardasil may have been the problem. And the family doctor agreed that the timeline following each of the shots and the symptoms Julia experienced was suspicious, but of course they couldn't say that Gardasil was the cause because they didn't know Merck had lied to the public and to the medical community. Now, Julia was put on several different medications over the next months, but nothing worked for her. She continued to miss school regularly and saw her quality of life diminish like crazy. Her mom, this is hair-tearing for a mother who loves her daughter.
Yes.
Her mom tried to change her diet and altered her school schedule to include online learning in the hopes of reducing the stress and improving her symptoms. Absolutely nothing worked. And after being diagnosed with fibromyalgia and years of struggle, Julie's life continues to alter in a very downward and dramatic course.
Mm-hmm.
Now the kid is 19. And to all 19-year-olds, I'm 71. Forgive me if I call you kids, because from my perspective, yeah. But she struggles to keep up with friends, cannot participate in many of the things she used to enjoy. She was forced to stop cheerleading because she couldn't participate. And she's had to go to only online learning exclusively, and instead of attending in-person classes. And her mom says, this is no life for anyone. And according to the complaint, Velasco was developing serious and debilitating autoimmune disease, including POTS, and a constellation of adverse symptoms, including complications, injuries, and severe POTS. Now, what is this? POTS is an autoimmune disorder that can be incapacitating. It affects a branch of the nervous system that regulates functions we do not consciously control, including blood pressure, heart rate, perspiration, and body temperature. People with POTS often experience fainting, migraines, anxiety, and other life-altering health issues. Now, if Mrs. Velasco had been informed about the known safety risks, she never, ever would have allowed her kid to have these shots. And Gardasil, which is one of the most expensive vaccines on the market,
Yes.
also tends to cause the most of the injuries. Now, Julia's symptoms after receiving Gardasil are far from unique. Now, according to the data from the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System, VAERS, more than 64,000, that's a lot, 64,000 case reports of adverse events have been reported after individuals received Gardasil vaccines. experts estimate that only 1% of vaccine adverse events are actually reported. According to the complaint, Gardasil now has more reported injuries than any other vaccine. And the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, remember, folks, that's you, and that's me, and that's Mike. It's our tax money. And the Vaccine Injury Compensation Program has paid out millions of dollars.
Billions.
Well, this one says millions for Gardasil.
Oh, for Gardasil. Okay.
Induced injuries and deaths. And it's also the most expensive on the marketplace.
I think it goes for like $300 a shot. Of which
no, it's more.
Oh, it is?
It's more. 2 doses of Gardasil 9 presently cost about $450, plus the cost of 2 office visits. In 2018, Merck made $2.2 billion from Gardasil sales in the U.S. alone. And in 2019, Merck made $3.7 billion worldwide in Gardasil revenue. Now, Mrs. Belasco, this gal's mom, seeks to hold Merck accountable for its alleged negligent, reckless, and fraudulent conduct, and for causing her physical and emotional injuries and harms as a result of Gardasil's. Today's lawsuit alleges the company willingly placed Gardasil's profits ahead of patient safety. Now, Mrs. Belasco is requesting that exemplary, that's punitive damages, be assessed against Merck to deter the company and other would-be defendants from engaging in similar alleged reprehensible conduct. And, again, my heart goes out to this woman and her daughter. The medical establishment believed everything they were told.
Yep.
And she said, it's too late for my daughter. The damage is already done. But it's not too late to warn other parents about the truth about Gardasil, said Mikel Belasco, Julia's mother. Thousands of families are going through what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And she's made friends with people around the world through the net whose kids are suffering just like this young woman, Julia. She's not alone. She wants Gardasil off the market so that her grandkids and other children don't have to needlessly suffer these injuries. Now, this, for any parent out there, you need to think about this. Human papilloma virus vaccines have been tested on 4 to 6-year-olds. Additional general allegations against Merck. Merck provided, get this, financial incentives to legislatures to attempt to make the Gardasil vaccine mandatory in all school children. Vaccine pushed Gardasil using trusted doctors and third-party front groups. Merck deceived regulators and the publics by classifying severe adverse effects, which afflicted nearly half in all study participants as coincidences. 50% coincidence? I think not. And Merck manipulated the study protocols to block participants and researchers from reporting injuries and designed the studies to mask any long-term adverse events. Merck deceived regulators and the public about its pivotal Gardasil clinical trial, Protocol 018, and contrary to Merck's representations, Gardasil may actually cause and increase the risk of cervical cancer and other cancers.
Oh, what a wonderful medication.
Merck has concealed the fact that Gardasil, including its adjuvants and ingredients, induce and increase the risk of autoimmune diseases. The Gardasil vaccine's harm is not just limited to the United States, but rather the vaccines have injured patients all over the world. So in light of Gardasil's serious and debilitating adverse effects, the Japanese government rescinded its recommendation that girls receive Gardasil. Denmark has opened specialized clinics specifically focused on treating Gardasil-induced injuries, including Gardasil-induced autoimmune diseases. Gardasil-induced adverse events caused the government in Colombia to that Gardasil would no longer be mandatory. Okay, and they've killed people in India.
Yes.
And accused Merck of corruption after the death of several young women who were participants in the trial. Folks, I think we can all find this. You can search it in a Google search. And the next time you go to your kid, your 13, 14-year-old kid, and they say, what about a Gardasil shot? And you can look at them and you say, the class action lawsuits, you didn't know? Hand them this article or one of the articles about the class action lawsuits.
They're definitely out there.
Tell them, as I'm going to do with my primary care physician, who I love, but I see the Gardasil ads in the waiting rooms, in the exam rooms. And I'm going to say, the hospital with which you're facilitated is going to want to treat this vaccine as though it were the plague.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I remember reading where Gardasil was actually triggering narcolepsy in some of the
in the UK?
In the UK.
Yeah.
And I noticed lately the pharmaceutical ads we have on TV, they're pushing a medication to treat narcolepsy now.
Yeah.
So that's it. We put out a product that causes an illness, and then we sell you a cure for the illness.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pharmaceutical model these days.
Yes, it is.
And anytime that I'm looking at getting any kind of vaccination, I'm not adverse to vaxes, but I want them to have been around for a while. Thank you very much. And Ivanka, go ahead and take the COVID-19. I mean, there is no way for us to validate that that's actually what the medic or the doctor is injecting you with, because it's going to be a closed set. We also know that.
Yes.
But
could be saline.
Yeah, could be saline. We don't know. But I'm just saying, Ivanka, talk to your dad about the bad vaccines that are out there. It's not fair that the taxpayers have to pay for bad vaccine manufacturers. And this goes back to legislation right after 9/11, right, Mike?
Well, there were a couple of different legislations. One of them was the Homeland Security Act. Actually contained a provision saying that you can't sue vaccine makers for civil damages. And that's when the vaccine court was set up. And the idea basically was saying that vaccine makers could put out bad and dangerous products and suffer no ill effects. Now, I don't know how this class action lawsuit is able to move forward with the Homeland Security Act provision there, but I certainly wish them a lot of success. And certainly while vaccine makers are not liable for bad products they put out there, I certainly am never going to have another one.
Well, they're going to absolutely get scorched in the marketplace of public opinion.
Yes, they should.
Yeah. And you know what I think happened here, Mike? I think that there was someone on the inside at Merck who realized that the trials had been badly manipulated and badly botched, and how the language was constructed around that to make Gardasil look no worse than the
the placebo. Yep.
And I think someone decided, I can't be part of this anymore, because there are discoveries that we are making, and the states are making about, for example, this very horrible adjuvant form of aluminum.
Yes.
To allegedly make the vaccine more potent, and it's toxic. And
well,
so,
anything with aluminum in there is going to have neurological problems.
Yes.
I mean, that's why everybody was upset, about the mercury in thimerosal. They're metals. You're not supposed to have metals floating around inside your body other than the iron.
Yeah. And one thing I would like to happen is I would like whoever signed off on this at Merck to do some hard jail time, and not at a club fed. You hurt children.
Let's shoot them with their own needle.
No.
Several thousand times.
But what I think is that there has to be a standard in this country that people cannot knowingly and knowing and signing off on something like this can allow people to get sick when they know absolutely and without a doubt that there's a problem.
Well, you need to understand the medical industrial complex needs us all to be sick. If we were all healthy and taking care of ourselves, the whole system would collapse. Even Goldman Sachs is out there saying actually curing people is a bad business model for the medical community. That the goal is to get them sick and then keep them on perpetual treatments.
And it's not that I say don't use medicine. Use it, and also some ancillaries. I have some back issues, and my doctor is referring me to a physical therapist with whom I've worked before. She's wonderful. Don't give up on medicine. But there are times when you are going to have the power of knowledge in your own hands.
Yeah, be aware of the latest and greatest.
I think it's really, really important. And when you were at a doctor's office, before a kid is due for any kind of booster or anything else, ask them for, or bring in, better yet, bring in the circular on that drug. For example, I'm thinking the DTaP.
Yes.
You know, all the horrific things this vaccine can cause. And I think parents have to look at the timing of that vaccine. And if you have never seen this, and I have three actually, who are medical professionals, and I have encouraged them all to see the film Vax.
Yes.
If you haven't seen it,
yeah, we've talked about it before. We got to take a break to commercial. Back with the last segment of our program after these few words. And welcome back to our show. Last segment of our Powhana Friday on this 19th anniversary of 9/11. And Claire, you have another story for us.
Yes. This must have been incredible to watch, although I did not see it. Apparently, Biden's spokesperson melted down over teleprompter and COVID questions. And apparently, Joe Biden's National Press Secretary, T.J. Ducklow, that's an interesting name, just gave a train wreck of an interview on Fox News where he shifted between anti-Trump talking points and backpedaling defensively over simple questions such as Biden's reliance on teleprompters and what the former VP would have done differently or better than Trump in terms of the national response to COVID-19. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping moment was when host Brett Baer asked Ducklow a simple question over Joe Biden's use of teleprompters that goes back to at least July. And the question was asked, has Joe Biden ever used a teleprompter during local interviews or to answer Q&A with supporters, asked Baer. And all of a sudden, Ducklow just launched into this defensive tirade, accusing Baer of parroting Trump talking points and trying to distract the American people. And Baer asked 2 more times to answer the question, while Ducklow deflected, and accused the network of funneling Trump campaign questions. Mike, if this is the best Biden A-team can do 54 days out before the election, it feels like this campaign is about to implode seriously.
Well, if there was an honest campaign and election going on, Biden would definitely lose by a landslide. But they really don't care because they're planning on stealing it with the mail-in ballots.
Right. And I have one more to share with our audience. Apparently, Mueller's angry Democrats scrub cell phones after Russia investigation. Now, over 24 phones belonging to members of Robert Mueller's special counsel team were wiped clean before they were handed over to the Inspector General, according to the information contained in 87
But it was an accident.
pages.
Trust us, it was an accident.
Of DOJ records released on Thursday. Something to hide, guys?
I
mean, 12 cell phones?
Yes.
Mike, what are your final wrap-ups to today?
Well, obviously, again, this is the 19th anniversary of 9/11.
Right.
And the corporate media is out there trying to sell the official myth, as they will continue to do. I mean, look how long ago the Kennedy assassination was. Half of Americans know there was a cover-up and a conspiracy, and yet officially and on corporate media, it's still crazed lone nut assassin Lee Harvey Oswald.
Right.
Okay. Who are saying we want a new investigation. It's a waste of time. It just gives the government a chance to polish the lies. But we have we know what happened. At the very least, we can all agree on the fact that we were lied to. And we need to decide, what are we going to do about a government that lies to us, not just about 9/11, not just about John F. Kennedy, but about Saddam's nuclear weapons and Iran's nuclear weapons and Korea's nuclear weapons and just about everything else in order to get us to do what they want us to do. And that really is the question that is facing the American people here. What do we do with a government that rules us with lies, fraud, and deception, including those riots that are all over the country? Okay, there's the music. Time for us to get on out of here. Stay tuned for John Stadmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Have a really good weekend. Spread the word of RBN. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We need your help to stay on the air. We'll be back on Monday. Aloha, America.